And hello, this is Jack Eppington for Space World Update, bringing you an update on Boeing Starliner. That is the crew spacecraft that is set to compete with SpaceX's Dragon for the NASA Commercial Crew Program. If you've been following along, you know that this program has been in development for some time, and the latest hang-up came about 2 months ago in June when Boeing came up and said, we're going to take a pause here because of two main technical issues that were hanging up the progress of the commercial crew flight test. That one involves parachutes, and the other involved a type of tape that was used inside the spacecraft to protect the wiring and was found to be flammable. Now, they gave an update today, NASA and Boeing did, and there's some good news about that. But before I get into the weeds on that, I want to address the larger issue, which is the whole possibility of the Boeing Starliner flight. This has been going on for some time, and I think people have gotten a little frustrated, not without good reason. But despite the various technical issues that have happened with Boeing, and to be honest, almost any new spacecraft has them, Dragon did as well, this is part of the process for getting a new spacecraft up to speed like any technical project. Now, I've heard a lot of commentary from people who are knowledgeable about it and people not so knowledgeable that maybe it's just too late. The space station that is being resupplied by commercial crew is not going to last forever. And SpaceX has won most of the flights in order to do it. So, what's the point, they say, at continuing with the Boeing Starliner at all? Given the number of technical problems that it has had, perhaps Boeing is just going to give up and walk away. Or NASA will give up on Boeing and walk away. Well, I'll tell you something. In today's presser with NASA and Boeing representatives, they both made very clear nothing like that is going to happen. They are in for the long haul, and they are going to launch Starliner sooner or later. Look, when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. This has been going on for years and years, and it's really important to NASA to have a second provider for a commercial crew, not just have it be all about SpaceX's Dragon. That was the whole impetus for having commercial crew in the first place, to have two providers. And right now they only have one. They only have SpaceX. So it's really fundamentally important to have Boeing Starliner in sooner or later. And basically that was the message today, that whether it takes a long time or short time or however long it takes, NASA and Boeing are married and they're going to get this done sooner or later. So don't look for a give up or an end termination of a program. It's not going to happen. Whatever it takes, they're going to do it to get Boeing Starliner ready. Now let's talk about the specific issues. Since that June update, Steve Stitch, who is the NASA commercial crew manager, said there has been, quote, a tremendous amount of progress since then in getting the problems solved. Again, two issues. One had to do with parachutes and the other had to do with the electrical tape. The parachutes had a problem with the soft links, which is a part we learned that sort of connects the capsule, the actual spacecraft, to the risers that go up to the canopy. And they simply had not been found to have the necessary margin of error in terms of the loading that you get when you use a parachute on a spacecraft. So they have been testing a redesign of those soft links. That's being tested now, and they've also been looking at the entire parachute system for Starlink. And they like what they're finding. They really have not found any other issues with the parachutes, but they've been putting in this fix for the soft link issue. And the next step is to do a drop test, another drop test, to qualify the new chute. It's actually a new variation, an update of the parachute design. I think it's called P11, they said. But it's a new chute, and all the other previous fixes and design issues have been built into this parachute design and things that have been previously tested in other drop tests. So at this point, they say they only need the one drop test to qualify these new soft links, and that will qualify the parachutes. The parachutes now have to be tested with this new fix, and that's going to be coming up at some point soon. Uh, and they think that it's a guess. They don't really know for certain, but they're looking at maybe if all goes well, the test will happen in mid to late November, and then that in turn will drive the schedule for launch. I mean, with all the work that still has to be done, nobody was promising a specific launch date. What they say, as you would expect, is that we will launch when we're ready. They think, and this is just again a wild guess on the part of NASA and Boeing, maybe March of next year, 2024. But there's no launch date, nothing has been set in stone. But the next time milepost would be about March of 2024. Now, just speaking for myself, if you got to March 2024, you could have a launch, assuming there are no other problems, later in the spring or summer of 2024 for the crew flight test. If the crew flight test goes well, then Boeing would go into regular service. And NASA said that if and when that happens, Boeing Starliner will have missions. It's scheduled and contracted for 6 missions, and they will basically alternate with SpaceX's Dragon. They'll have Starliner Dragon, maybe one each per year. So that's the plan. But of course, they still have more work to do. Part of that involves the tape. Now, the tape was a source of some humor and concern when this came out because it was a question of the tape being flammable, and of course you can't have that in the spacecraft. We learned a little bit more today about what the problem actually was. Well, it's relative to the application. A tape can be flammable, but it depends on the environment it's in. Can it propagate fire? Is it really dangerous in the specific place in the spacecraft? Well, apparently the data on that was a little muddled in NASA databases. They didn't really explain it clearly, but they said there was no absolute clear specification about flammability standards. And so that's why you had this situation of having flammable tape inside the spacecraft and not having it really be clear. Since then, of course, they've started taking out all of this flammable tape, but not all of it. Boeing said about 80% in the work that they've done so far, which is mostly the top of the spacecraft. It's still in work right now, and they've been very successful because the tape itself is made out of Teflon. It comes off apparently quite easily. If there are certain situations where they really can't remove it, there are other remediation things that they can do. They can put up a barrier that would prevent propagation of fire, or they might apply a different kind of protective tape on top of the tape. This is P13 tape, and it is something that is used throughout the aerospace industry pretty much. And it is, again, something that is relative to how you're using it, what the application is. So they're well on the way to solving that problem with the flammable tape, which is good news. They said that there has been a joint Tiger team. Both NASA and Boeing have been involved in remediation of getting this tape replaced and out of the way. It's still going on right now. This will continue until at least September, when they expect to start doing regression testing to make sure that they really got the problem solved. A couple of other program issues have been addressed, they say. At this point, about 98% of the certifications needed for flight are done. That's good news. And the software testing is largely behind us, said Steve Stitch. And there are more independent reviews being added to make sure that nothing else has been missed. And that was a suggestion made by the NASA Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel. And so that's another layer of oversight to make sure that as the work continues that they don't have anything like this happening again. And they're even going to re-interview people that they've already interviewed, subsystem managers, to be really sure that all the safety items are, the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and so forth. Um, so that looks to be a pretty optimistic point of an update. They're still working, and at this point, we're looking at least I guess September or November for the new drop test for the parachute. They say that's all that they need at this point to qualify it, given the data that they have from previous drop tests. And then the tape removal and reviews of everything with the spacecraft. Their best guess, again, is maybe March of 2024. And only at that point are they going to really take a hard look at when they might be able to launch. I wouldn't bet personally on 2024 March, but that's a good milestone. If they're good at that point, they will probably be able to set a no earlier than date, and I suspect it would be maybe summer. That point depends on the actual interaction with the space station, the visitors schedule, when they can actually get up there and get a port to darken and things like that. So it's way behind schedule. Of course, it always has been, but it's basically looking now like the middle of next year. So we'll see. We'll see. It sounds like they're working hard, and they've got some progress, and we'll hope, cross fingers that there are no new technical issues beyond the ones that are being remediated now. But again, I think the larger point here has to be that Boeing Starliner is not going away. They're in the middle of the river, and they're going to keep on going to the opposite shore. There will be a Boeing Starliner at some point, says NASA. So we'll see how it goes. That's an update. We'll keep watching this. I'm Jack Eppington. Thanks.